Heartstring Media presents
Hearts of the Cultivators. Written by Poppy Wei Lian.
narrated by Hudson Calder and Ren Rosewood, featuring Aaron Vallon and Yuri Blanchet with the Lingshan Ensemble. Chapter 3. Zhang Yuelu stood balanced on the highest point of Tianyi Sec's outer wall, the narrow tip of the ornamental roof ridge supporting his weight as effortlessly as solid ground. Below him, chaos reigned. Flames consumed the lesser halls, their orange glow painting the night sky with the color of retribution. Screams and the clash of metal against metal rose on the wind, carrying to him the sounds of justice long overdue. He remained still, a dark silhouette against the moon, his formal robes untouched by the violence below. Not a single hair stirred out of place as he observed the systematic dismantling of what had once been considered the region's most formidable sect. The jade pendant at his waist warmed slightly, signaling an incoming communication. He pressed one finger to it, activating the connection.
Eastern compound secured,
Came Zhao Minghua's calm voice, as steady discussing battle as it was when discussing medicine.
Their storehouses contained more than reported, mostly spirit stones and cultivation materials, and records, many records.
Jiang's mouth tightened. What kind of records?
The kind that confirm our suspicions, lists of villages, tribute amounts, punishment schedules,
A pause.
and inventories of children.
The jade warmed again before Jiang could respond, and Xu Zhelin's voice joined the conversation.
Main hall cleared. Their elders tried to destroy documents, but we were faster.
Xu's normally diplomatic tone carried an edge of disgust.
I've found financial records showing transfers to several bandit groups operating in the region. They've been orchestrating the attacks, then offering protection afterward.
Jiang surveyed the burning buildings below, his expression hardening. As expected. For centuries, Tianyi sect had presented itself as a beacon of cultivation righteousness. Their public face was one of benevolence and protection. They accepted disciples from good families, maintained immaculate grounds, and performed charitable works with great ceremony, all while their shadow operations bled the surrounding territories dry. Any resistance remaining? Jiang asked, his voice betraying none of the rage simmering beneath his controlled exterior.
Only the inner disciples and the sect master,
Xu replied.
They've retreated to the central courtyard. Our forces have them surrounded.
Jiang nodded, though his brothers couldn't see the gesture. I'll handle the sect master. The communication ended, and for a moment, Jiang allowed himself to remember. The hunger that had hollowed his cheeks as a child, the beatings administered for the slightest infractions, the windowless room where he and 5 other boys had huddled together for warmth during bitter winter nights, all under the protection of Tianyi sect's subsidiary orphanage. He had been 8 when they came to collect tribute from the orphanage master. He remembered watching from the shadows as finely dressed cultivators accepted payment, knowing that money could have fed them for months. He remembered the way they had glanced at the children with cold assessment, selecting the strongest for training, children who were never seen again. Nearly 3 centuries later, the same practices continued. Different children, but the same cold eyes. He and his brothers had escaped that fate only because Lingshan sect's grandmaster had happened upon the orphanage during an inspection tour, had recognized their potential, had given 6 starving boys clean clothes, real food, and a chance at a future they had seized with both hands. The jade warmed once more. Master Jiang, came a voice from one of his senior disciples. We've found the cells. There are children here. Some have been experimented on. Jiang closed his eyes briefly, his composed expression faltering for just a moment. Get them out. Have the healers attend to them immediately. Already done. We're documenting everything as Master Song Jingyi instructed. Good. Jiang opened his eyes, resolve hardening his features. It's time to end this. He stepped forward off the roof ridge, allowing himself to fall for several heartbeats before activating his sword energy. Blue light erupted around him as he descended, his spiritual power manifesting as crackling lightning that danced along his blade and across his form. Disciples below scattered at his approach, their faces white with terror as the infamous first master of Lingshan descended from the sky like an avenging immortal. Tales of his prowess had spread throughout the cultivation world, some exaggerated, some not. Tonight, he would give them new tales to tell. He landed in the central courtyard with a controlled burst of energy that cracked the stone beneath his feet. Across from him, a semicircle of Tianyi's elite disciples stood protectively before their sect master, swords drawn but hands trembling. Behind them, Sect Master Wen, a man well into his 11th century of cultivation, one of the oldest sect leaders in the realm, stood with apparent calm, though Jiang could see the calculation in his eyes. Lingshan's sect has overstepped, Wen called out, his voice carrying the weight of authority he'd wielded for centuries. This unprovoked attack— Unprovoked, Jiang interrupted, his voice dangerously soft. He took a single step forward, and 3 disciples visibly flinched. We found your records, Sect Grandmaster Wen. We found your cells. We found your children. Wen's expression flickered briefly before settling into righteous indignation. Fabrications and misunderstandings. If you violated our privacy based on rumors. Our record keepers are thorough in their documentation, Jiang cut in again, taking another step. Messengers have already been dispatched to the other great sects with copies of your financial records. Our healers are currently treating children who bear the marks of your special training. For the first time, uncertainty crossed Wen's face. From the corner of his eye, Jiang saw Zhao and Shu enter the courtyard from opposite sides, each trailing a contingent of Lingshan disciples. The remaining Tianyi forces glanced nervously between them, recognizing the tactical disadvantage. You cannot simply destroy a major sect without consequences, Wen said, a hint of desperation entering his voice. Jiang's smile was cold. Watch us. He moved then, faster than most eyes could follow. His sword became a blur of blue lightning, cutting through the air with precision that spoke of 3 centuries of relentless practice. The first 3 Tianyi disciples fell before they could even raise their weapons in defense. Across the courtyard, Zhao engaged another group, his movements fluid and economical. Where Jiang's style was direct power, Zhao's was efficient precision. His sword flashed with green energy, each strike targeting pressure points and meridians. His opponents dropped without fatal wounds, but they would not rise again soon. Shu, meanwhile, fought with his signature fans rather than a traditional sword. Golden light spiraled from the razor-sharp edges as he danced between opponents, his expression almost pleasant as he disabled one cultivator after another. His technique was deceptive, appearing ornamental until the moment it proved lethal. The 3 brothers moved in perfect coordination, a result of over 3 centuries fighting side by side. They needed no verbal communication, each instinctively covering the other's positions, creating a deadly triangle that steadily closed in on Sect Grandmaster Wen. As the last inner disciple fell, Wen finally abandoned his dignified stance. With a snarl, he unleashed his full spiritual power, the force of it creating a shockwave that pushed outward from his position. Stone cracked beneath his feet as a swirling vortex of red energy surrounded him. I have cultivated for over 1,000 years. My foundation was laid before your ancestors drew breath, he roared, drawing a second sword from his spatial ring. Do you truly think 3 upstart children can defeat me? Jiang stepped forward, motioning for his brothers to stand down. I alone will be sufficient. Rage contorted Wen's features at the insult. He attacked with both swords, each trailing crimson energy that sliced through the air with destructive force. His technique was undeniably masterful, honed through millennia of practice and countless battles. Jiang met the onslaught with perfect calm, his single blade intercepting each strike with precision that made the complex defense appear effortless. Where Wen attacked with rage and power, Jiang responded with economy and control. "You rely too heavily on raw spiritual energy," Jiang observed, deflecting another furious assault, a common failing among those who progress quickly but learn poorly. Wen redoubled his efforts, his swords becoming a whirlwind of deadly intent. "You dare lecture me? A mere child of 3 centuries? Jiang didn't bother responding. Instead, he changed from defense to offense in a single fluid motion, his sword tracing a complex pattern that seemed to bend space itself. Blue lightning crackled along the blade as he executed a technique known only to Lingshan Sect's direct line. The first strike shattered Wen's left sword. The second disabled his right arm. The third opened a precise wound across his chest. Wen staggered backward, genuine shock replacing his rage. "Impossible," he whispered, looking down at his injuries. "That technique, it cannot be." "The heavenly thunder sword art," Jiang confirmed, advancing steadily. "Lost since the fall of the immortal empire 5,000 years ago. My master rediscovered it among ancient ruins and improved it." Fear finally entered Wen's eyes. "Wait, we can negotiate. Tianyi sect has resources, connections." "Tianyi sect has nothing I want," Jiang replied coldly, "except its end." His final strike was clean and precise, severing Wen's head with a single motion. The body collapsed, spiritual energy dissipating in a final futile flare of crimson light. Silence fell across the courtyard. Zhao approached first.
"It's done then."
Xu joined them, his fans now closed and tucked into his sleeves.
The cultivation world will be in an uproar. A major sect, eliminated in a single night.
Jiang sheathed his sword, looking not at his brothers, but at the night sky above. "They'll understand when they see the evidence. And if they don't..." He shrugged slightly. "We've faced worse." Turning his attention back to his brothers, he asked, "What of the children?"
"Most will recover physically, at least,"
Zhao replied. Jiang nodded, his expression softening marginally. "Ensure they're placed with proper families, or brought to Lingshan for those with cultivation potential."
"Already arranged,"
Xu assured him.
"I've already prepared formal documentation for the 6 Great Sects Council. With Tianyi's fall, there will be a power vacuum to fill."
A slight smile touched his lips.
"By morning, every major sect in the cultivation world will know not only of Tianyi's crimes, but of Lingshan's right to take their place among the great sects."
The 3 brothers stood in momentary silence, surveying the destruction around them. It was Zhao who finally spoke the thought they all shared.
"We kept our promise,"
he said quietly. Nearly 3 centuries ago, 6 starving boys had huddled together in an orphanage attic, making solemn vows to each other. To become strong enough that no one could hurt them again. To rise high enough that they could protect others. To never forget where they came from. Jiang looked at his brothers, 2 here, 3 overseeing their sect in their absence, and felt a rare moment of open pride. They had done more than survive. They had thrived. And now they used their power as they had always intended. "We did," he agreed. "But our work is just beginning." They still had 7 subsidiary sects to assess, each one having operated under Tianyi's protection. Some would be allowed to continue under Lingshan's oversight. Others would face the same justice as their former master. "We should proceed according to the list," Jiang said. "Yunbao sect first, then Baiyun, Xuanmen, and the others. Qinggu sect will be our final stop before returning to Lingshan." Xu nodded, mentally calculating.
2 months, perhaps longer if we conduct thorough investigations at each location.
"Take whatever time is needed," Jiang replied. "We'll do this properly."
"I'll prepare a delegation for each sect.
Shu confirmed.
And gather what intelligence we already have on their operations.
As they left the ruined courtyard behind, Jiang felt no remorse for the lives ended this night. Only satisfaction that one more corrupt power had been removed from the world, and one more step taken on the path he and his brothers had chosen long ago. Justice, after all, was a cultivator's true path to immortality. 2 months after Tianyi sect's fall, the dust had settled, both literally and politically. The 6 Great Sects Council had received Lingshan's evidence with initial skepticism that quickly turned to horror as the extent of Tianyi's crimes became clear. After weeks of deliberation and formal investigations, the council had not only formally declared Lingshan's actions justified, but had made a historic decision that shook the cultivation world. Lingshan's sect would take Tianyi's place as one of the 6 great sects, joining the ranks of Yunhua, Xuanmen, Bingfeng, Tianyun, and Qingfeng sects. It was unprecedented. No sect in the past millennium had risen to such heights so quickly, and whispers of unease spread through the cultivation world at Lingshan's meteoric rise to power. Now, Zhang Yuelu and his brothers soared through cloud-streaked skies on their swords, the wind whipping their robes as they headed toward Qinggu sect. A small contingent of attendants followed at a respectful distance, just close enough to provide support if needed, just far enough to give the brothers privacy.
Qinggu is barely worth calling a sect,
Shu remarked, his sword gliding effortlessly alongside Jiang's.
20 disciples at most, and half of those are children.
Small doesn't mean harmless,
Zhao countered.
Some of the deadliest poisons come in the smallest vials.
Jiang said nothing, his eyes fixed on the horizon where mountains rose like jagged teeth against the sky. Qinggu sect occupied the smallest of these peaks, a humble collection of buildings that could easily be mistaken for a village from a distance. By late afternoon, they had reached the town nestled at the mountain's base. Unlike the prosperous communities surrounding Tianyi sect, this one showed signs of genuine struggle. Weathered buildings, patched clothing, yet a certain resilience in the faces of its inhabitants. The brothers chose the town's only inn, a modest 2-story building with a faded sign swinging above its door. The innkeeper nearly dropped her tray when the 3 brothers entered, recognition dawning in her eyes. Word traveled fast in the cultivation world, especially after recent events. She hurriedly showed them to the best room on the upper floor and promised to serve their finest food and wine.
We'll need rooms for our attendants as well,
Shu told her with the easy charm that opened doors throughout the cultivation world.
And information about Qinggu sect, if you have any to share.
The woman nodded eagerly, backing away with multiple bows. An hour later, the brothers sat around a low table in their private dining room. The food was simple but plentiful: steamed fish, rice, vegetables from local farms, and a surprisingly decent wine. Zhao and Shu ate with appreciation, complimenting each dish. Jiang, however, picked at his food with barely concealed disappointment.
Is the fish not swimming to your exacting standards, Brother Jiang?
Shu teased, refilling Jiang's wine cup despite his protest. Jiang frowned. The sauce is too salty, and the fish is overcooked. Zhao laughed, shaking his head.
For someone raised on gruel and stolen scraps, you've developed remarkably particular tastes.
He studied his eldest brother's face, still as youthful as it had been for over the past 3 centuries, though few outside their circle knew their true ages. Like all powerful cultivators, they maintained the appearance of their prime, frozen in their late 20s, despite the centuries that had passed. I prefer things done properly, Jiang replied with dignity, though a hint of a smile touched his lips.
What you need,
Shu declared, gesturing with his chopsticks,
is someone who can cook to your impossible standards, a nice young woman who—
Don't start, Jiang warned, though there was no real heat in his voice. This was an old conversation, comfortable in its familiarity.
I was merely suggesting—
You know perfectly well that none of us has shown any interest in women,
Zhao interrupted, his tone practical as always.
Over 3 centuries of evidence is rather conclusive.
Jiang took a long sip of wine, considering his brothers. It was true. Over 3 centuries of cultivation had brought countless opportunities, young women who had made their interest clear, yet none of the 6 brothers had ever pursued such connections. Their preferences lay elsewhere, a fact they acknowledged among themselves, but rarely discussed openly.
Perhaps we're cursed,
Shu suggested with mock seriousness.
Some ancient spell cast upon 6 orphan boys.
Or blessed,
Zhao countered.
considering the rumors about your lovers, Shu.
Jiang snorted into his wine. The cultivation world buzzed with outlandish tales about the brothers' supposed romantic exploits. Shu supposedly kept a harem of noble ladies across 5 provinces, each more beautiful than the last. Zhao was rumored to have seduced the daughters of 3 different great sect leaders, sometimes simultaneously. 5th brother Rong had allegedly married a phoenix princess in secret, while 4th brother Feng was said to have enchanted every female formation master who visited his valley. Even 6th brother Song supposedly had a different celestial maiden visit his library every night. The most absurd rumors surrounded Jiang himself, that he bathed in the blood of beautiful young women to maintain his cultivation, that he broke maidens' hearts as casually as he broke swords, that his cold exterior hid insatiable appetites. Some even claimed he had an entire palace of celestial beauties hidden in the clouds above Lingshan Peak. The 6 demons of Lingshan, Jiang murmured, recalling the moniker that had spread throughout the cultivation world. A name whispered with equal parts fear and fascination.
I still don't understand why they call us demons,
Zhao said, refilling his cup.
We've done nothing but uphold justice.
Justice looks like demon work to those who profit from injustice,
Shu replied with unusual solemnity. What the cultivation world didn't know, or chose to ignore, was that beneath their fearsome reputations, the brothers were simply men. Extraordinarily talented, uncommonly handsome men, but men nonetheless. When they traveled incognito without the weight of their titles, they often found themselves fending off admirers drawn to their looks rather than their names. Just last month, Jiang had been forced to make a hasty exit from a night market when a merchant's daughter had followed him through 3 streets, determined to give him a special discount on her wares. Zhao regularly disguised his features when treating patients in remote villages, having learned that his patients' hearts sometimes raced for reasons unrelated to illness. Even 4th brother Feng Liwei, who rarely left his formation studies, had once returned from a research trip complaining that a fellow scholar had been more interested in his face than his theories. The truth was far more mundane than the rumors suggested. Between their responsibilities to the sect and their personal cultivation, none of them had much time for romantic entanglements. I need some air, Jiang announced, rising from the table. The wine had left him restless, and his brother's teasing had stirred thoughts he preferred not to examine too closely.
Don't forget your mask,
Shu called after him.
Remember the incident at Yunmeng Night Market?
3 marriage proposals in one evening.
Zhao added dryly.
A new record, even for you.
Jiang reached into his sleeve and pulled out the simple half-mask he and his brothers often wore when traveling incognito. Though many knew of the Lingshan brothers, fewer could identify their faces with certainty, an advantage they maintained deliberately. For Jiang, the mask served an additional purpose, shielding him from the persistent attention his features inevitably attracted. Jiang slid the mask into place and stepped out into the gathering dusk. The town was settling into evening, lanterns flickering to life in windows as workers returned home. His fine robes and masked features drew curious glances from locals, who quickly averted their eyes when he passed. Without conscious decision, he summoned his sword and took to the air, flying toward the mountain that housed Qinggu sect. Not to the sect itself, they would make their official visit tomorrow, but to the surrounding forest that cloaked the lower slopes. He landed in a clearing and dismissed his sword, enjoying the solitude. The mountain air was clean here, fragrant with pine and wild herbs. He walked without purpose, letting his thoughts settle like disturbed water returning to stillness. After some time, he became aware of a sound, water trickling over stones. His cultivation had left him with little need for regular bathing, but the thought of warm water against his skin appealed after days of travel. He followed the sound, pushing through a dense grove of bamboo that grew increasingly thick. Then it gave way to a small clearing, and Jiang stopped, frozen by the sight before him. A natural hot spring lay nestled among rocks, steam rising gently from its surface in the cool night air. Moonlight filtered through the bamboo, casting silver patterns across the water's surface. A soft splash drew his attention to the far side of the spring. Jiang's breath caught as a figure emerged from beneath the water, rising like a spirit from the depths. Hair as black as midnight cascaded down slender shoulders, water streaming from locks that seemed to absorb the moonlight itself. The figure turned, unaware of Jiang's presence, and he found himself staring at a profile of such perfect beauty it seemed almost unreal. High cheekbones, a straight nose, lips full enough to suggest softness without appearing delicate. Features so perfectly formed they might have been carved by a master artisan seeking to capture beauty itself. A twig snapped beneath Jiang's foot, betraying his presence. The figure whirled, revealing his full face, and Jiang felt something shift in his chest, a tightening, an ache he couldn't name. Those eyes, an unusual hazel gray, wide with surprise and framed by lashes that cast faint shadows on his cheeks, caught the moonlight like rare gemstones. In over 3 centuries of cultivation, Jiang had seen many beautiful things. None had affected him like this. With a startled gasp, the bathing youth immediately sank deeper into the water, submerging himself to his chin. Despite his attempt to hide, Jiang could sense his cultivation level, surprisingly low and genuinely young, perhaps 20. It was unusual to find such a low-level cultivator bathing alone in these dangerous mountains. Jiang stepped fully into the clearing, allowing the moonlight to illuminate his masked face. "I didn't realize this spring was occupied," he said, finding himself oddly pleased by the encounter despite the impropriety. Those remarkable eyes narrowed slightly.
"Well, now you know. There must be other springs nearby."
The voice matched the face, youthful, but with an unexpected sharpness. Jiang surveyed the clearing, noting the neatly folded clothes on a nearby rock. "None with water this clear," he replied, his gaze returning to the spring. Standing at his full height of 6 feet 3 inches, Jiang knew he cast an imposing figure, even partially hidden by shadows. "I've been traveling for days,"
"That sounds like a personal problem."
came the retort. Jiang felt his lips twitch with unexpected amusement. Few people spoke to him so directly, especially those so young. Most either cowered or fawned in his presence. This defiance was intoxicating. "Indeed it is," he agreed. "A problem that could be solved by sharing this generously sized spring." The bathing youth blinked, clearly taken aback.
"Excuse me?"
"The spring is large enough for 2, Jiang continued, already untying the outer layer of his traveling clothes. His fingers moved with deliberate slowness, watching for a reaction. "I'll stay on the opposite side, little bamboo spirit."
"Little? What did you call me?"
came the sputtered. "Bamboo spirit," Jiang repeated, gesturing to their surroundings. "Found in a secret bamboo grove, with skin like jade and eyes that catch the moonlight. What else would I call you?" A flush spread across those perfect cheekbones, visible even in the dim light. Jiang found himself wondering how far down that blush might travel.
"My name, if I chose to give it."
Came the tart reply.
"Which I don't. And you can't just..."
I can and I will, Jiang interrupted, shrugging off his outer robe. The cool night air against his skin was a welcome contrast to the heat building within him. Unless you're planning to physically remove me from this clearing. He paused, his hands at the tie of his inner robe, one eyebrow raised in challenge above his mask. Even in the dim light, he could see his bamboo spirit assessing him, taking in Jiang's broad shoulders and evident strength. The youth's smaller frame would stand little chance against him. Something like resignation crossed those beautiful features, and Jiang felt an unexpected twinge of guilt at forcing the issue. Yet he couldn't bring himself to leave.
Fine, the opposite side, and turn around while you disrobe.
As you wish, bamboo spirit, Jiang replied, unable to keep a note of amusement from his voice. He turned his back, continuing to undress with efficient movements. Despite his apparent confidence, Jiang was acutely aware of the unusual situation. He rarely indulged in such impulsive behavior, especially with strangers. Yet something about this beautiful young man had broken through his usual reserve. Once undressed, he stepped into the spring, the hot water a welcome relief against his travel-weary muscles. He settled on the opposite side as promised, the water reaching his chest. "See? Plenty of room," he said. His bamboo spirit glared at him across the steaming surface, and Jiang found himself captivated by the play of emotions across that expressive face. Annoyance, wariness, and, most interestingly, curiosity.
Do you make a habit of intruding on private baths?
The youth asked, voice sharp, but with an undercurrent that suggested he wasn't truly angry. Do you make a habit of claiming public hot springs as private? Jiang countered smoothly, enjoying the verbal sparring far more than he should.
It's not public if no one knows it exists.
I knew it existed, Jiang pointed out reasonably.
Only because you were trespassing through these mountains,
came the quick retort. Jiang leaned back against the smooth stones, finding himself unexpectedly comfortable both in the hot spring and in this unusual conversation. All mountains belong to heaven and earth, not to men. The other rolled his eyes, the gesture surprisingly sophisticated for one so young.
Save the philosophical platitudes for someone impressed by them.
Jiang laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even himself. When was the last time he had laughed with a stranger? You're refreshingly direct. Most people wouldn't speak so boldly to a stranger.
Most people aren't interrupted during their bath by masked intruders.
Fair enough. Jiang studied him openly now, intrigued by the contradictions he observed. The youth's speech patterns shifted between educated and common, and there was a grace to his movements that belied ordinary training. You're not from the nearby sect, are you? The question seemed to catch his bamboo spirit off guard.
What makes you say that?
Your speech patterns, your mannerisms. Jiang's gaze traced the elegant line of that throat where it disappeared into the water. You don't carry yourself like someone trained in their style. His companion tensed slightly, sinking lower in the water.
I'm just a disciple gathering herbs,
he said, his voice suddenly rougher.
Nothing special.
There was more to this youth than he was revealing, a mystery Jiang found himself unexpectedly eager to unravel. The combination of youthful beauty and hidden depths was proving dangerously alluring.
Why the mask?
The youth asked. Jiang touched it reflexively. Why the pretense of being ordinary? The youth stiffened.
I don't know what you mean.
I think you do, Jiang replied, his voice casual. Your speech shifts between educated and common. Your movements are too precise for just a disciple gathering herbs. You're hiding something,
says the man in a mask.
His bamboo spirit deflected. Another smile touched Jiang's lips. Touché. The steam rose between them, carrying an herbal scent that Jiang hadn't noticed before. He inhaled deeply, recognizing rare ingredients that spoke of significant knowledge. That's an unusual soap, he remarked. Mountain sage, spirit mint, and Something I don't recognize.
You have a good nose.
I have good everything, Jiang replied. A startled laugh escaped his bamboo spirit, followed by a blush that spread from his cheeks down to his neck. The sound, bright and genuine, sent an unexpected warmth through Jiang's chest. He found himself wanting to hear it again, to discover what other unguarded sounds he might coax from those lips.
And humble too,
His bamboo spirit added, still fighting a smile. Humility is overrated, Jiang said with a dismissive wave, already plotting how he might elicit that laugh again. Accuracy in self-assessment is more valuable.
Is that why you're traveling alone through dangerous mountains at night? Accurate self-assessment of your invincibility?
Something flickered in Jiang's chest, surprise perhaps that this beautiful spirit had turned the conversation back to him so deftly. Despite his apparent youth, there was a sharp intelligence in those hazel eyes that suggested wisdom beyond his years. I prefer solitude for thinking. My companions are sometimes distracting.
Companions? You mean servants, guards?
Brothers, Jiang corrected, of a sort.
And what brings you to these particular mountains?
He asked, curiosity evident in his voice. Jiang studied him for a moment before answering. Personal matters. I find these mountains restorative.
Personal matters.
The youth repeated skeptically.
In the middle of nowhere?
The middle of nowhere is precisely where personal matters are best handled, Jiang replied with a slight smile. Away from prying eyes and expectations. The conversation continued, each exchange revealing more layers to his bamboo spirit than Jiang had anticipated. The youth was clearly educated, despite his attempts to appear common. He was observant, quick-witted, and possessed a rare fearlessness that Jiang found himself drawn to. As steam rose between them, Jiang became increasingly aware of the intimacy of their situation. Two strangers sharing a hot spring under moonlight, separated only by a few feet of water and their own restraint. The thought sent an unexpected heat through him that had nothing to do with the spring's temperature. You're not what I expected to find in these mountains, Jiang admitted, his voice dropping to a lower register.
And what did you expect?
The youth asked, something in his tone suggesting he sensed the shift in atmosphere. Simple disciples, humble cultivators. Jiang's eyes traveled over what he could see of the youth above the water, his face, his shoulders, the curve of his neck, each detail more captivating than the last. Not you. His bamboo spirit shivered visibly, despite the hot water. Jiang found himself wondering what it would be like to trace that reaction across his skin, to discover what other responses he might draw forth.
I am a simple disciple,
The youth insisted, though the claim rang hollow. No, Jiang said with quiet certainty. You're not. The realization that he had lingered far longer than intended suddenly struck Jiang. His brothers would be wondering about his extended absence. He moved suddenly, water rippling around him as he shifted to a more upright position. It's getting late. I should return before I'm missed. He rose partially from the water, noting with satisfaction how quickly his bamboo spirit averted his eyes, focusing intently on a nearby rock. The flash of modesty was oddly endearing in one who had shown such verbal boldness. Jiang dressed efficiently, though he took his time, curious if the youth would look again. He didn't. You can look now, Jiang said, amusement evident in his voice. His bamboo spirit turned to find him fully dressed in his traveling clothes. Thank you for sharing your spring, Jiang said.
I didn't have much choice,
He reminded him. Everyone has choices, Jiang replied, gathering his belongings. You chose to stay rather than leave.
The spring was mine first.
He said, a hint of petulance in his tone that Jiang found unexpectedly charming. Possession is a temporary state, Jiang replied, but I'll remember that this one is yours, bamboo spirit. He turned to leave, then paused at the edge of the clearing. "Perhaps we'll meet again,"
I doubt it.
came the swift reply, though Jiang noted the uncertainty in his voice. With a slight nod, Jiang stepped back into the bamboo forest. He moved silently through the grove, his thoughts unusually disordered. In all his years of cultivation, few encounters had affected him so strongly. His bamboo spirit's beauty was remarkable, yes, but it was more than that. There was a genuineness to him, a sharp intelligence beneath his attempts to appear ordinary. The combination of youth and wisdom, beauty and wit, had left Jiang feeling strangely unsettled and intrigued beyond reason. Tomorrow, they would officially visit Qinggu sect. And Jiang found himself anticipating the visit with unexpected eagerness, hoping to encounter his bamboo spirit again. Regardless of what they discovered about Qinggu's connection to Tianyi, Jiang had already made one decision. The youth with the unusual eyes and sharp tongue would be returning with them to Lingshan. His fate had been sealed the moment Jiang saw him in the moonlight. You've been listening to Hearts of the Cultivators, a Heartstring media production, written by Poppy Wei Leon, narrated by Hudson Calder and Ren Rosewood, featuring Aaron Valen and Yuri Blanchet, with the Lingshan Ensemble.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you never miss an update in the Hearts of the Cultivators series. For more information on our books and upcoming releases, check the links in the description. Thanks for listening.